Okay, we are live.
Awesome. We'll give it a second for people to trickle in, and I will share with the team. Hello, everyone. We're live on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. So feel free to come on in and jump right in the chat and say hello.
Yeah, we'll get started at the 04 marker. We're ready to get cooking here.
Welcome, Carrie. Always great to have you in the chat with us. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. Awesome. Thank you for liking the live, Carrie. Showing that love always helps. And we are ready to get rocking and rolling. So hello, everyone. We are live right now on TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. So welcome from wherever you are tuning in from. I'm Liz. This is Travis. And you are watching Fink's Live. So we are Fink Future is Now Coalition. And you can think of Fink as your civic utility company. And just like any other utility company, our goal is to connect the needs of the people with shared resources that run on shared standards. And that is exactly what Fink is building for America and democracy. We are plugging everyone into a fair, citizen-led system of representation. And how are we making participation simpler? Well, we are putting every candidate on equal footing, lowering the barriers for grassroots voices, and we are streamlining the democratic process. So all of that leads us to a system that has less waste, more representation, and provides better democracy for us all. So with this built-in accountability with these shared standards, at Fink, we are keeping leaders accountable and answerable to the people while reducing the need and sway of money in politics. So again, we are Fink, and we welcome everyone to plug in, be heard, and get results. So before we dive into the episode today, a friendly reminder to hit follow, tap that heart button, and most importantly, jump into the chat. We love talking with you guys. Ask us your questions. Let us know how you're feeling. And just every bit of social engagement, every like, every subscription helps our message reach more people. And so we really appreciate the people that have done that and invite more to do that. So today, we are doing another AMA with our founder, Travis. So we're going to jump right in with my first question, and that is going to be, Travis, why do you think meaningful reform in a democratic process almost never really starts with legislation? And how is Fink addressing that route? How do we not start with legislation, and what is the alternative to what Fink is building?
Sure. So, I guess what you're asking is why reform efforts aren't legislative reform efforts are not being that effective these days. And so, pretty much, it's the idea is that I say this a lot on this show, but you can't get the wolf to lock their own cage, and you know. For the longest time, like the way most legislation would happen is there's a like before we got to the digital age, money and politics, stuff like that, there would be the public pressure that would push reform. So, an organization and people would organize to call their senators, maybe protest, things like that, to pressure the politicians to pass legislation that might not be in their own selfish interest as a candidate, um, but by the demands of the people, and still works to some extent. But the big problem is at this stage, the way money in politics is more rampant than literally ever before, and just the way the system is today, that it's the public pressure still does not counterbalance the amount of money and influence of big donors, special interests, establishment media. Um, so basically, we're pushing for both ourselves and other organizations to evolve and recognize that those efforts need to be changed. There needs to be a change in how we perceive these things, and so that's why with Think, we're not anticipating or expecting legislative changes anytime soon. What we're doing is knowing what exists today, knowing the current legislation, knowing where the political climate is, building something that changes that influences elections without the legislative changes. So, for example, like the platform we're building, Digital Democracy, is going to showcase all politicians equally, and it'll also showcase their funding sources. So in that example, like, we know we can't get legislation anytime soon to get money out of politics, but we can make it harder that, okay, you could take this money, but we're going to make it a lot easier for citizens to know you're taking this money and know that you have these conflicts of interest. As well as also lifting grassroots voices. So those that have a genuine message and don't have the conflicts of interest, they're going to be a lot louder on the system because it's a level playing field. So, even though, establishment candidate A has $20 million and you only have like $1 million, well, on our platform, you're equals, and it's up to your selling yourself and your merit of how good of a candidate you are to the population. So that's just one example of like how we have to change we have to change the system from the outside, have a new system that elects better candidates, and then everything can fall into place. Those better candidates are going to know that they should put legislation in there like money out of politics, flexible voting, like ranked choice voting, ending gerrymandering, things that are non-partisan on both sides. Most voters want these changes to happen. But again, we have to change it from the outside first, because the pressure, the way the pressure worked from the past is not working anymore. And so we have to, what we call, change the game, knowing that the legislation isn't going to change anytime soon.
And I'd like to add some contextualization for people. Like, we all, whenever we hear money in politics, nobody likes that, right? But the 1% that benefit. So what Fink is talking about is saying, well, gosh, those that take money in politics and are bought out by the corporate, donors aren't going to vote or pass legislation against their own interests. So rather than just hope and pray that they change their mind one day and vote the way they should, what Fink is addressing is, well, if those that are bought by corporate donors aren't going to pass legislation, what if we change the way we put people into power, right? People that do want to end, corporate donors, do want to end insider trading, do want to end XYZ. Because let's be honest, people, the RNC and DNC and the establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans, they know that you hate that they do insider trading. They know that they don't serve you when they take $10 million from big pharma or big oil. So rather than continuing the cycle of just waiting another 4 years and putting the same people in power, what Fink is saying is, if those skeletons were revealed of donors, if people had a better way to vote for who actually represents them, we could actually start changing things from the bottom up. We could get better people in power. We could get people who actually represent us, who care what the voters want rather than just bowing down to the big donors. And that's what we're all about, changing things from the bottom up rather than when we talk about legislation, that's from the top down, right? And gosh, I'm 36, and many people have been on this earth longer, and we just have waited election cycle after election cycle after election cycle with these promises that democracy is going to be fixed if you just vote for me and not the other guy. And both parties are guilty of that. And we are saying, if we are able to vote for higher quality candidates that have merit over money, the game could start changing in a way that, gosh, it's not changing in the current system. Awesome. So, Travis, what does it even look like when people stop waiting for lawmakers and start using today's system differently? So, kind of a secondary question to the first one, but yeah, what does that even look like when people stop, waiting just for every election season to make change? What can we start doing today with the current system, but using it in a different way?
Yeah, sure. So, it's still not widely known yet, but there's a lot of efforts that are starting to bud, this emerging change that's slowly happening, with like us and other organizations where basically they're using the current system differently, as Liz said. So one example is that is like one of our partners, America's Main Street Party. They are a party, but they're not based on a specific policy stance. And what they're building is they're building an app that they would go to a district and provide this tool that helps sort out who do you want to win. In this case, it's the House of Representatives. Um, so they want to actually give the power to the citizens, have them go through a contest, and then the winner of each race would end up being the winner, to run in the general election through their party, and get the funding from the party. So they don't get party funding until the citizens choose the leader who should move forward. And so those are the kind of examples of the organizations that we want to amplify and interconnect. So, it's very bottom up. The current way the system works is that the DNC and RNC, the Democrat establishment, Republican establishment, they know who they want to run. They force them through the primary with very little input from the American people. And then and then at the end of the day, we're just voting for the lesser of two evils. The establishment approved Democrat and the establishment approved Republican. And then we get to choose between the two, and we call that democracy. So what we want to do on the biggest scale is completely flip the script. So we're building, again, the platform's digital democracy, where it's going to showcase all politicians equally. And part of that, we're hoping to have it launched by the general election, is having what we're calling the people's primary. And so the idea is really empowering Americans to know their choices way ahead of time, who's running, both in the Democrat primary, the Republican primary, but also third-party candidates, independents. Basically, per race, we want to compare side by side, show America what your genuine choices are, narrow that choice over time, because you don't want like 30 choices at the general election, or else no one's going to end up winning anything different. And so by the time the general is getting closer, you would have narrowed down your picks as America, have 1, 2, maybe 3 top picks that go into the general election and run against, assuming the establishment Democrat and or establishment Republican is still going to be in that general, but have an alternative front runner in each race that Americans truly decided for themselves. And, so we're bypassing the noise, bypassing the manipulation. There's a lot of manipulation that goes into us being forced into two lesser evils. So these candidates, they could be a Democrat, they could be a Republican, they could be a third party. Doesn't matter to us. It's what America ends up doing. In certain races, it might differ in different ways. Some places it might have to still be a two-party, and some places maybe an independent or third party has a chance. It'll it'll be broken down in this people's primary, be very clear who's electable, what are their chances, and going into the general election, you'll know, how likely is that person to win, and like, would it be a waste of vote for me to vote for that person? You'll know that going in. So anyway, so that's us at the bigger scale, but like America's Main Street Party has a version of this that they're working on, and there's just budding other efforts of technology trying to do things like this, as well as candidates, or ways of running candidates that's more bottom up. It actually gives Americans their power to make their choice. All this boils down to is the candidate selection process, how we choose who gets elected. The system itself, as it stands right now, is completely unfair, and we're talking about building a level playing field that really gives it to the citizens to make these decisions themselves.
Travis, I have a follow-up, I guess, kind of clarifying question. So you talk about reworking the system, how it currently is, repurposing it. So can we address a little bit about the diluting of resources, the diluting of the ability to speak to people? So I think people, they say, oh, I'm a good voter. I go out to vote and I give my $5 to whoever. Like, what more can you expect from me? But can you address a little bit about the diluting of resources, and then also the need for consensus and kind of a narrowing, a focusing of efforts to really address moving the needle forward?
Yeah, sure. Great questions. So the in terms of like, am I giving enough? Because the answer is you probably are giving enough, but the efforts need to be more concentrated, more specific. So for example, let's say you donate $10 a month somewhere, but like if you're donating to like the Democrat Party or the Republican Party, like the DNC, RNC, something that general, you don't know where that money goes. You assume that money is going to the specific policy efforts that you like, but you don't know that. And even immediately, what people should be doing is donate as specifically as possible. Donate to the party. Donate if you know a candidate that you really trust and you really feel they'll fight for you. Give them the money because they will fight hard. But don't assume giving it to the party as a whole is going to in any way help that person. A lot of times, the best candidates that you do want are going to actually be against the interests of the party leaders. So that's one piece, is that focusing your time, money, and energy into putting it where you're going to get more of a return on your interest, and somebody's not just blowing smoke up your ass to get your money or your vote, and then they're going to do whatever they want with their big donors and special interests. So that's one side of your question. The other side is, one of the main core problems why democracy doesn't have teeth is because democracy in general has a susceptibility to differentiate more and more. So like if this is my policy stances, then somebody else is going to come out, well, I agree 90% of the time, but I have a 10% difference here, and then so now I'm a separate choice. And now someone else is going to be, oh, well, I like that too, but mine's going to be 7% different. Now I'm a third choice. And so democracy, because we're human, we like to differentiate, especially these days. Our the current zeitgeist is all about differentiating ourselves. And so, people do it, parties do it, candidates do it. So the problem is there's redundancies that keep happening. There's like, we shouldn't be breaking off when there's like a 10% difference, because then now you're just diluting votes, you're diluting money, you're diluting resources. So for example, those that like more of the far left, there's several far left, like progressive third parties that are like very similar to one another. There's like the Working Families Party, Green Party, the People's Party. So like they have very similar platforms, but then when like, even if you were going to gain any support, by the time you get to the general election, all right, well, now I have 10 choices that are very similar. and then then some people are gonna vote for different pieces, and then you dilute the choice, and then you have no chance to beat against the establishment, the Democrat or Republican front runner. So a lot of what we're trying to do is build infrastructure, build processes where, like, first you have a lot of choices, whether it's for a policy, like working out a policy stance, or working out which candidate to support, which party, which organization to support. No matter what the scenario is, step one is knowing all your choices. Then step two is start building a consensus and start narrowing those choices. So maybe at first there's 30 candidates running that's going to run in one race, and then over a matter of months or whatever, what we would call the people's primary in a couple of years, narrow down more and more. So like you start with 30, and then like maybe 2 months in, it's like, okay, the bottom 10 get cut out by this date. If they don't get enough support, you narrow it down. And so, start with giving everyone a choice, but then narrow it down, all with America being the decider, no one else. America has to be giving their input through polling and electronic voting, different ways to score popularity in a fair way. And so the goal is really to just narrow down, keep narrowing it down, so that by the time, like in a candidate scenario, by the time it gets to the general election, who's running. The front runner of the alternatives. So again, that example of like you're progressive, and you're between like Green Party, People's Party, and Working Families Party. By the time the people's primary is over, you'll know which one of them has the chance to succeed, if any of them have a real chance to succeed, and then move on to the general election. So you don't split up the votes before that point.
Awesome. Sorry, I was having some tech issues, and you went in and out a little bit, so hopefully that didn't translate to anyone else but me. Well, great, and I see some great people popping into our live, so I'm going to do a quick reset of the room, and then we'll keep asking Travis some questions. So welcome if you are new to our live. We're Fink, and we are your civic utility company, and we are building an alternative system, an alternative option to the current rigged system. We're building this with you, with America, to make democracy fair, simple, and accountable. So if you're just joining us, remember to like, subscribe. Our handle is futureis.org across all social media, and jump into the chat section. We're here to answer your questions, so come say hi and ask us your questions. So moving right along, Travis, how does people power, like we're talking about, compete with the establishment when we're talking about things like funding and narrative? So what does that look like, both in the rigged system of today and the system that Fink is building?
Sure. So the way the current system works today is basically, so like I said earlier, the DNC and RNC, before the primary is even close to beginning, they have their front runner. They know one, maybe there's more than one, but they have their clear establishment picks that they want to win the primary, and they're going to want to push that through and get them to the general election. So what happens is, it's both a self-fulfilling prophecy as well as a manipulation. So first they get the media's attention. The establishment media is going to say, oh, this is the front runner, this is the candidate most likely to win. And it's like, you don't even know who's running yet, and they're saying that this is the candidate that's going to win. The media is going to put them in front of the microphone. They're going to put them on the camera. They're going to ask them questions right from the get-go. And that candidate that they don't necessarily want to win, they're not going to get attention. And, they have to grow massive popularity from scratch before news would ever look at them for 10 seconds. So, there's almost never a debate. It depends on races and whatnot, but they're, the grassroots candidates, they don't go in debates. They don't get the attention from the media as much as possible. You have the big donor networks of the Democrats and the big donor networks of the Republicans that will funnel their money right from the get-go to those establishment candidates, prop them up immediately. So anyone that actually is going to represent you, somebody that's going to start from the ground up as a people-focused, people-first candidate, they have so many obstacles right from the get-go that you don't even know they exist in this current system. So it's like the chicken or the egg. How are they supposed to get any popularity if they're not on the media? They're not allowed in debates. They can't afford billboards yet. They can't afford any kind of advertising yet. So how do they get their chance to prove that they're the best candidate for you? And so that's where we're stuck today. And it's not impossible, but it grossly over influences towards the establishment. Every now and then a grassroots candidate can beat all the odds, but it's very few and far between. But so what we're offering is a one standardized system, one system that showcases all the candidates equally, no matter how much money they're making, all that stuff. And so the idea is, instead of really most people, by the time they get to the election, they're going to vote D down the line, or they're going to vote R down the line. Only 10% of the voters even involve themselves in the primary. And part of it is just they don't feel like their vote counts that much, but also it's too overwhelming to even know who should I support in the primary, because they don't want to make that information easily accessible. All they want is, the guy that spent the most money, yeah, vote for him. That's who we want. It's like, well, what about those other guys? The other one might represent me more. So anyway, so what we're talking about is building one structure that showcases everyone, and so it's more efficient, it's cheaper. For the cost of like 1 or 2 Senate campaigns, we can advertise digital democracy to all 50 states, showing them, hey, this is where you go to narrow down the candidates and eventually get a winner by the general election. And provide you with all the tools you need. We're not pushing you to left or right or any kind of policy stance. That's all for you to decide. We just want everything visible and transparent and give you the tools you need to make a decision for yourself. But so what we're talking about here, so it both helps the candidates because, those that didn't sell out for big money, they're getting showcased on this platform regardless. So they have a benefit that now it's up to me as my merit and not me spending a ton of money right from the get-go is how I grow. I grow by resonating with my voters, by building trust with my voters, by listening to my voters and giving them what they actually want. That's what gets you rise to the front rather than spending the most money. And then the other factor is, as we add the politician report cards and actually show basically opening the skeleton closet that these establishment candidates, they could promise the world that they never deliver on, and now we're going to open the closet and they said they're going to fix healthcare, but they took $30 million from big pharma over their career. So we're going to make it very transparent and easy for you to see the conflicts of interest and see how why they don't do what they say in office. They always blame the other party. Oh, the other party stopped us, and even though we have a majority across the chambers and we're the president, the other party somehow magically prevented us from doing anything. So we're just another 4 years of uselessness, and then it just flips back and forth. So now you'll actually see, oh wait, they didn't do that because the money they get would not allow them to do that. There is a conflict there that they would lose their big funders if they pass a law that actually helps the average person. So that's how we want to flip the script, and that's what we envision a digital democracy looks like. So all candidates are shown. It should have always been this way, even before digital. It should have been like, we should have always invested in democracy and then showcasing all your choices rather than every man to advertise for themselves. Then it's just an unfair race, and they end up having to sell out in order to have money. And it all boils down to, they need the money so they could pay for a voice, so you could see them. The candidates just need to be seen. And instead of each one spending millions of dollars, we could build one platform that ensures all of them are seen. And then it's up to their merit to win.
Part of what I'm hearing from that, Travis, is what Fink is building is both, like you said, a level playing field, equal exposure to the general public, to the voters, regardless of their war chest in their campaign, but also accountability of, promises, funding, habits, just kind of the skeletons in the closet of people. So that ties in perfectly to my next question of as a people first, people forward movement, such as ourselves, uh, a lot of times, great people have started great organizations and they just don't go anywhere. So, what makes Think unique with the type of coordination and shared standards that we're building that, really starts with the people and not with those already in power?
Yeah. So, so one big piece of it is that we're looking to empower every American. Most movements and political orgs, they have a specific agenda, and so if you're not going to support their agenda, you're not included in their movement. So that's one place where we're unique. We just want every American to truly have a voice, truly be the decision maker that they were promised as an American, as a voter. They were told that they get to vote for, they get to choose their candidates, and just over the years, it's been pulled more and more away from them being able to make their own decisions. Um, so, um, so that's one way that we're unique, is that we focus on not left versus right, but up versus down, and that's the idea of, we want people to really assess a candidate. If you're only going to vote right, that's fine. If you're only going to vote left, that's fine. But just add this one extra layer. Ask yourself, does this candidate serve me, or do they serve special interests? And it's can't really be both. There's some that are kind of in the middle, but where are their alliances? Are they here to say, when they're signing in a legislation, or they're working on writing legislation, all that stuff, are they thinking, if I do this, will I lose that big donor that promised me $50,000 next week? Or are they saying, oh, my voters are going to be pissed, and that's why, I want to do, if I pass this, it'll help lower healthcare prices, and my voters will be really happy that their healthcare price goes down. And yeah, they have to balance. They have to see both of it. They see the big donor, but then they also see their voter. But it's more of like, I have to appease my big donor, but how many voters can I afford to lose? And like, all right, I get, these people, they're not paying that much attention. We'll take out the most important part of this bill, and it sounds like we still passed the thing that I promised initially. Most of our voters won't know that, and like, so that's the incentives. That's how the game is played in today's politics. So if you flip the script and you elect people that have genuine intentions to be a civil servant, they are supposed to be a civil servant, they serve us, and that is nowhere near most of their brains right now. They have no thought in their mind that they serve citizens in any which way. They're playing a game of politics, and it's about power and whatnot. So those are parts of what makes us different. And also, like, to really create change, people need to be focused on what they want, like a specific legislative change, or a candidate change. And one of the issues with the reforms, like, they get very caught into like the protest call repeat cycle of like protesting, calling senators, and repeat. And while we're not here to say protesting doesn't have a place, it's still like it needs a at least complement something else. And so it boils down to, you're really trying to get as many people on the same page to do a certain action. So it's either like all these people are saying they demand this legislation, all these people are going to elect this person, or all these people are going to boycott something for a couple days to show something. So it's about showing, like, in order to have the people power, they can't just be protesting in a general idea. There has to be specific actions that they want to take. But so what makes us unique is that we're not even necessarily pushing the end all action. We're building the infrastructure that allows all actions to be taken place. So as we build this new way of looking at politics, so the mindset change that we're talking about is digital politics. The platform itself is digital democracy. With the mindset, with the both together, with a new way of seeing politics tied to this new platform that we're building, we want to help citizens create that change, but it's more structured of like, if you funnel everyone into one standardized system, doesn't there's going to be very conflicting ideas and opinions. Some people, they're going to be very different. We're especially these days, we're a very divisive country, and that's fine, but we just want to structure it and build a consensus around certain decisions. So there'll be certain right-leaning decisions that gain popularity that the left might not like, but then vice versa. There'll be left policies that the right aren't going to like. And the idea is just adding new ideas, different ideas, just testing the waters of the popularity of different ideas. But no matter which direction you want to go, we're trying to structure it and organize it in mass scale, so that if millions of people go into a platform, but they have like a bunch of different ways they want to go, well, this is going to keep it organized, and this is going to start with like have all your choices, but then let's narrow down your choices into just a handful of choices, so that it actually has teeth, instead of like, oh, there's like 200 different ways that we could do this, and so everyone's divided on 200 choices. No, we need like 3 choices at best. There's maybe like a left choice, a right choice, and more of a centrist choice. It does get more granular than that, but it's important to like consolidate efforts rather than keep differentiating. And so we're building a system that kind of allows both. It allows you to first differentiate, but then when push comes to shove, consolidate, so you could find more common ground with more people.
Yeah, I think it's a really new concept for people of how to, just get out of the rigged system, and how we could actually build this more efficient, cheaper, more representative system. So before we get more into the meat and potatoes of that, I want to reset the room and just reintroduce ourselves. We're Think, Future is Now Coalition, and we are building your civic utility company, which is an alternative to the rigged, bought out nature of democracy today. And we are building it for America and with America. And it'll make democracy fair, simple, and accountable again. So invitation for all of you watching, like, comment, subscribe. That really helps us share our message across social media more. Our handle across all social media is futureis.org, so you can find us anywhere. And jump into the chat section. We're here to answer your questions, so come say hi to us. Let us know what you think about our mission. But going back, Travis, to what we are building, how Think is this unique alternative system to the unrepresentative system of today. Can we talk a little bit about maybe a one-to-one comparison of what the rig system pretends to offer people and what Think is actually giving people? So talk about, we talk about the debate stage and how that's not representative of what people want, and how Think is building a more representative, open debate platform. And maybe also talk about how the system demands candidates, regardless of how they are across the political spectrum, the need to raise money, the need to have millions, the need to talk to and always come back to your big donors, rather than relying on the needs of your voters. So if you can give kind of, 1 or 2 examples of what the rig system of today offers and what Think is building to actually give you those results.
Yeah, sure. So, we touched on a lot of how the money directly influences. So candidates need millions of dollars just to be seen by voters, so voters even know who's on the ballot. So we're flipping that by basically showing you everyone that's on the ballot and more of the details of each of them. But even like what you're saying with the debate, so like, I mean, even if it's like all the good candidates aren't even spending that money. The funny thing is, like, so right now it's more like, people vote D down the line or R down the line is number 1. Then number 2 is more name recognition. They're gonna only recognize like one name under D or R, and that's usually the one that they're gonna vote for, unfortunately. But like these ads and stuff are actually not that influential. Like, other than the name recognition factor, I mean, look at the ads that you see. It's always about the negative of the other person. It's almost all attack ads these days. Because, like, let's let's call it what it is. Like, both sides don't have a vision of how to actually solve our biggest problems, so they circle back to the problems we've had since the 60s and 70s, or mostly they just attack the other opponent. And like, so it's like, oh, what's your plan for healthcare? Well, the other guy, blah blah blah. Well, what's your plan for immigration? Well, the other guy, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, you dude. So, you know, so that's where most of that funding is going, is towards attacking the other party, because you have nothing that you're for, so you can only push what you're against on the other side. And then so that's how a lot of the advertising goes. And then the debate stage, I mean, they talk about like the last presidential debate with Biden and Trump was about like golfing, who's the better golfer. Like, oh yeah, that's really why America's going to choose their next president based on who's the best at golf. That's really what we're all looking for. But like, the debates don't have much substance. If a candidate gives a roundabout answer, the moderator doesn't press on that. Like, that's what you're supposed to do as a moderator. You're supposed to make sure you actually get an answer from someone. And instead, it's just all performative. It's all about entertainment. It's not to actually help you choose. It's really just to entertain, get views, get name recognition. So that's the system that we're stuck in today. So yeah, so what we're envisioning, part of this digital platform showcasing all the candidates, we're also talking about digital primaries, or I'm sorry, digital town halls. So like digital town halls, Q&As, AMAs, just simple things where citizen, the district, your district can ask you questions, your constituents can ask you questions in a text format, like just more streamlined, easy ways for a candidate and citizens to communicate directly more. Because then it both takes the pressure of raising all that money out the door, and it just streamlines it, makes it easier. Like, what do we want right now? The majority of a politician's time is just dialing for dollars nonstop, and they're not dialing for your $5. They're dialing for a CEO's $10,000 or more. So most of their time is dialing for dollars. You can look that up. It's statistical. It's the facts. But what they should be doing is really kind of, I guess it's a balance between legislating and actually talking to the voters and knowing and representing. It's representing and legislating, and so it's a mix of that. I guess top of my head, I think a little bit more on the legislation side, but so what we're talking about is streamlining it. Imagine one day that you could pull up your district as a politician, see where your district stands on each policy stance. Like, each candidate should be focusing on what their district wants. Like, that is what a democracy is meant to be. Even if you call us a republic, that is what a republic is meant to be. You elect people to represent us, represent your interests. And when they give you a promise, they should be at least legitimately trying to achieve that promise. And if they know they can't deliver the promise, that should not be part of the promise. But yeah, so what we're talking about is really streamlining democracy, and it works it's a win-win for all sides. The only one it's not is for those that want the system to be rigged. It's not good for them. But a grassroots candidate that we're going to streamline the communication between them and their constituents. We're going to build a polling system to show exactly what your specific voters want. We're going to have the town halls, like different ways to communicate digitally. So just making it easier for all sides, user-friendly for the citizens, streamlined for the candidates. Also have a section for independent media, connect you to journalists so you have better news from more options. And again, it would just completely flip the entire system from the bottom up. And again, cheaper and more efficient to funnel it. It's like, for the effort it takes to win one candidate, we just need that same amount of popularity towards towards digital democracy. And then all 3,000 plus politicians that are elected right now would be showcased on the system, and we could keep building it out more and more. So way more efficient, easier, user-friendly, win-win for everyone except for those that cheat the system.
Awesome. And Travis, I'd like our final thought to be around Um, right, like you said, it's all about bridging the gap between the politician and those they're supposed to represent. And can you talk a little bit more about when it is easier to access your politicians or for the politician to access your voters when there's more communication, and if you can go into more about the digital need for communication, and how that actually weakens the rigged nature of the current system. So as we build this digital platform, this digital communication, this more efficient and user-friendly nature of the connection between voter and politician, how that actually weakens the hold that big money and corporate interests have on our democracy.
Yes, I mean it brings just a ton of transparency, and like right now a politician can take, like $50,000 from big oil, and then that's going to impact their investments on renewable energy and whatever, a lot of environmental concerns, whatever. And so right now, when they take that money, most Americans have no idea who's funding who. So you're just taking them for face value, and we all know, we've known from a young age that politicians lie. They'll say whatever you want to hear so they can get your votes for the most part. And what we're talking about is true accountability, transparency, and accountability. Because the only way we're going to get accountability is by making it more transparent, making it easier for Americans to know who funds this campaign, where is that money coming from. If they promise A, do they actually fight for A, or are they going to pivot once they're elected? And right now that's very hard to figure out by yourself. And then the journalists are supposed to be doing that, but they don't. The establishment media does not do that. They take their own sides. They're either pro Democrat establishment or pro Republican establishment, and so they're not going to call out their own side on broken promises and whatnot. So we're talking about streamlining the transparency, showing you the rigged patterns of today. That was another thing. So part of this mindset shift that we're talking about, to see politics differently, digital politics, is about seeing the rigged patterns, seeing how, like, yeah, that's right, they promise us stuff, they get elected, and then none of that happens. So then why are we believing them the next time they promise it, and then they get reelected? And like look at the Senate. They have such abysmal approval ratings on both sides, and yet there's literally almost 100% chance that every senator gets reelected when they go for reelection. Almost 100% of the time, no matter how much we're unhappy with them, they get reelected again and again, because there's no accountability. There's not better options that are being lifted up to actually stand a chance. So what we're talking about is more choices, better choices. Like, democracy should have choices, and it should be competitive. Running unopposed, that's not a good thing. Right now we see that people see that as a good thing. Like, maybe in the general, if your party's the one running unopposed, that's something. But like, in the primaries, each primary should have a plethora of choices. But like, it's so hard to win if you're not the establishment pick. So it's very demotivating to even try. Like, why should I try? It's almost impossible to win. I'm the best candidate. People would love what we're doing, but I'm gonna get squashed by the establishment. So what can I do? I'm only one politician. So building this system that lifts all grassroots voices, all the good candidates, everyone that's not part of the status quo, everyone that actually wants to play a fair game to choose our candidates, can come together on this. And that's a lot of people. That is a large majority of this country would want this, would want something where money does not dictate winning, where it's not this ultra extreme partisan, and then like it's both partisan, but then they don't actually deliver even on the promises once they're in office. So like most people are deeply unhappy with the way the system is, regardless of what party you're on. And so this is that answer. So if you if you want better candidates within the two parties, Think has a solution for that. If you want a third party to win or an independent to win, Think has a solution for that. If you're right leaning but you want better candidates, we have a solution for that. Left leaning, we have a solution. Like, it doesn't matter where you hail from. We want to empower your voice, give you more choices and more autonomy to make these decisions, to actually influence the results of an election, not just get a candidate shoved down your throat by each party. And so, like, very few people would be against this. Some people might be overwhelmed by what all the different pieces to what we're saying, but like, very few people should be against this, unless you're somebody that knows that you could buy democracy and you could buy the politicians, and that's how you want to keep it. That's who's going to be against this. Yeah, so that's the answer.
That's a great place to end. And I love how you ended that, Travis, of, however you deem democracy is broken, Think has a solution. If it's raising up better candidates, we have a solution for that. If it's getting money out of politics, we have a way forward with that. If it's, just getting better news media, better exposure for these types of things, and better exposure to the corruption happening, we have a pathway forward for that too. And I think that's a great place to end. So thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we are Think, Future is Now Coalition, and we are building with you and for you a civic utility company that makes democracy fair, simple, and accountable again. And like Travis has been saying, it exposes, conflicts of interest while also raising up merit without the need for big money. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be back again next Tuesday on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Our handle is futureis.org. Follow us across social media. Check out our website, futureis.org. And you'll see us again Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern and 11 Pacific. And I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Cool. Thank you, guys. See you next time.